topics related to something we call the light approach, and then I will be handing off to my dear colleague and professor and teacher in many ways, Professor Regina, which you all know and love. And let me just take you through what I'm going to be covering. We have I have nearly 30 minutes or less, so I'm going to just quickly discuss the challenge leading to the light framework. Try to explain the light framework in less than 20 minutes, which is, I'm going to give myself a big cake if it works, and then some extension efforts afterwards. So first, what's the challenge? Why do we need the light framework, or any framework in this regard when it comes to information management? Now, there's many reasons. First, when we're dealing with information nowadays, we're really discussing digital by default. We're not discussing just any kind of information. We're looking at how to manage a huge flow of information covering, the design, the construction, the operation. There's so many tools, new tools, there's so many new concepts, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's blockchain, or whether it is IoTs, etc. It's a huge emerging field, and really there is no high-level frameworks or frameworks that deal with all this complexity in one go, or try to make sense of it. So, I mean, there's lots of good effort, and this is just one of them, to try to find a way to make this complex thing about information management in our industry a little bit more understandable. And this is an attempt to deliver such a framework. Some of the things we know, some of the things we've used are, in many sense, in a sense, they're not really future-proof. Many things have already been generated lately, but still starting to show signs of aging already. So many of these things that we know and we use are not really future-proof. And how do we know? How can we predict the future? We can see what's happening in other industries that we typically, knowing or unknowingly, we follow, we learn from. There's many influences to light. I'll introduce what light means, but there's lots of theoretical, methodological methods and standards and theories leading to light. The top one would say lean project delivery. There's a lot to learn, and it's a lot to love. There's a lot to follow in lean. Lean, of course, focuses on production methods applied to construction. One of the things that lean does not cater for strongly is information management, and especially digital information management. This concurrent engineering, very strong theoretical backbone across more than one industry. But one of the issues with concurrent engineering, with its strength, is this what I refer to as stage decay. I'm just gonna quickly just something quickly. We cannot really cover this in any detail. Like, you could go from one stage to the next stage to the third stage, and then you lose the connection between these stages. If you go to the next one, you lose the connection with the stages, just 2 steps behind. Can learn a lot, massively from the agile and Scrum methodology and project management, especially in the software industry. But these ones are optimized for digital outputs. They're not really optimized for products, physical products. So we can learn a lot at the same time. They're not on their own applicable. We could go on and on. We could look at the V model. We could, there's a lot to learn, but there's some weaknesses in the V model when it comes to information flow, and with regards to measurement, horizontal measurement. It separates, so to give you an example, it separates between information actors and professional actors. In nowadays, really, all of us are information actors. All of us work in information. You cannot be like a designer, an engineer, an architect, and not deal with information management. If you're dealing, with digital information, you have to be both. You have to be an information actor at the same time as being an architect, an engineer, a constructor, a facility manager. And of course, there is the standards, the suite of standards, ISO 19650, very strong foundation for our industry. But also ISO has its limitations. It's in some sense, it is very abstract. In other senses, it's very prescriptive. Yeah, also, in some senses, it confuses information management with the procurement models. So there's lots of things to learn from all of these. But, at least this is what we're claiming, that there is a space for a framework for information management, which is, built specifically to tackle supply chain disintegration and try to help the supply chain to integrate by first integrating information flows. So there's lots of influence. This is not just the only influences leading to the light framework and the light approach, and but these are the main ones. And I would invite you to read the paper, which I'm going to be pointing to shortly. So what is this light framework thing? There's lots of research leading to the light framework. The main paper covering it, our first paper with my colleague and friend Eric Poirier, associate professor at ETS. He's part of it's a group called GRID within ETS. He's in Quebec in Canada. We published this in April 2020. It covers the light framework in general. What you'll see today is all explained in that journal paper. There's a link here. Hopefully later you'll be able to. There's a recording. There would be some sharing of the slides. You can download this paper and have a look on your own. Hopefully you find it useful. So the paper is called Lifecycle Information Transformation and Exchange. It's a very long title, I know. I'm trying to cover a lot. And it's intended for delivering and managing digital and physical assets. It doesn't come out of nothing. There's a lot of work before it. There's going to be lots of work after it. But the idea of all these frameworks, and I've personally worked on a number of them, is that they don't come like this. There's so many smaller conceptual items or components that need to be developed that lead to a framework. And this is just something from my thesis back in 2013. I probably have the record for the longest PhD thesis. Took 9 years. And that's how you connect terms, how to classifications, to taxonomies, to conceptual models, and then you end up in frameworks. So leading up to the light framework, there's lots and lots of terminology that needed to be defined, clarified. There's lots of classifications, there's lots of taxonomies combining these classifications, lots of models leading to the framework. And now, and the way this works is that these frameworks are not just intended to be read and understood or to be used in education or to fuel more research. The intention of these frameworks, and this definitely includes the one I'm going to be introducing today, is to produce practical tools. If for me and for many researchers, a framework has value in its own, but its value will exponentially grow if it can produce practical tools for people to use in their in the way they prove how they work, to help them predict information flow, to help them at the bare minimum to help them understand the world around them. So what is the life cycle information transformation and exchange approach? There's a lot of terms: life cycle, information, transformation, exchange, managing digital, physical, etc. So let's go through some of these quickly. When we say life cycle, this term, could mean many things. It could mean project life cycle. It could mean asset life cycle, like how it goes through from the cradle, from the initial idea of an asset till its demolition or reuse, and about information life cycle. And information life cycle is the core deliverable out of this framework about how the information starts from the conception through to the design and delivery of any kind of asset till its refurbishment and reuse. What information? What is information? You could find tens of definitions, if not hundreds of definitions of information in ISO alone, in the international standard documentation. You will find, meaning when I first looked, it was 78 back in July 2018, and then I looked again, a couple of weeks back, and now there's another 10 definitions. So there's now nearly 88 definitions of ISO, including actually now 5 covering building and construction sector. So really, there's lots of definitions. Not all of them are aligned. So really, the term information when used here is we're discussing any facts provided or learned about events. So it's very general. Try to take as general approach to information as possible, but then limit it to digital form of that information when we're discussing the flow of it. Okay, so but information. Lots of definitions. We don't really need to worry too much about how to define it, except that when we're dealing with it through this framework, it must be in digital form. Now, when we start to apply some of the things that this new approach, the light approach introduces, it introduces the concept of information as being 3 things. 1 of 3 things, 2 of 3 things, all 3 things together, as being just the manifestation of information. So when we say information, when we're dealing with information in our industry, we are dealing with information that looks to us like models, could look to us like a document, a digital document, or could be data stream, a data set. So that this idea that information is abstract, we need to define it in order to manage it. And the way the light framework defines it by saying it either appears to you, and it's very important, it's just how it appears to you. It could appear to you as a model. You could be looking at a 3D model on a screen, but it could embed lots of data. You could be looking at a document which has a 3D image in it, or you could have an interactive 3D PDF, etc. So you have a model within a document, or it could be just a data set. And now these are manifestations of information. And understanding information to be, this combination of models and documents and data set is very important to help us define it. And as we define it, we can manage it. And as we manage it, we could integrate it. And this progression is a progression of maturity. If you're familiar with the information and performance maturity work, you know that for anything to be integrated, it needs to be first well-defined, and then it needs to be managed, and then it can be integrated. So back to the term information, I was saying, okay, so we have information as models and documents and data. We could now look at how they're used. So how a document is used, how a model is used, how the data is used. We could look at the view. How I'm interacting with this information, and view definition, how I'm defining that view, what kind of viewer I'm using, and what kind of environment, really, which is the ecosystem of managing, exchanging, integrating information. Now, when we're discussing assets in the light framework, it does not really differentiate in a hard sense between physical and digital. This is something very important in the light framework, and it separates it from other frameworks. For example, we say You know, the physical asset could be a door, a handle, a column, it could be a pump, it could be anything. And there's a specific scale that you can deal with assets. And you won't find this in the manuscript itself, the published journal, but you can find it online in the BIM framework blog. And it introduces a scale, and this is very important. Asset scale is really underappreciated in our discussion of asset life cycle, because every time we try to discuss asset life cycle, people's thoughts go to buildings or like large structures, and tell them, hold on a second, meaning these assets are really portfolios of smaller assets. Okay, and these assets, the smaller assets, are also like a combination of smaller assets. So when we're discussing asset management and asset life cycle, it's very important to keep these different scales in mind and try to understand the flow of information across the life cycle for all different scales of these assets. So there is a life cycle for a door handle or door or a column. There's a life cycle for a pump. There's a life cycle for a mechanical system. There's a life cycle for the whole building, for a whole campus, you know, even for a site and a city, etc. Understanding these scales allow us to allows us to understand how to manage them in a more efficient way. And I won't be able to go into detail into how these scales apply across the framework, but I'm hoping when you read the manuscript, these things become a little bit clearer. So when we're dealing with assets, it's always, you know, this interplay between physical and digital. Meaning, what's physical and what's digital? Really, nowadays, it's becoming really ambiguous. You know, if you're putting a VR set, you know, what are you seeing? When you're using augmented reality, what are you seeing? It's a combination of physical and digital. If you're a human, you may be able to touch it and feel the physicality of it. If you're a machine actor, everything is digital for you. If you're a computer or a robot or an AI, everything is digital. There's no real physical sense there. So it's very important to cover this interplay between physical and digital, how they overlap. A door handle, a model of a door handle, a column, a document about a column, a whole city or a 3D of a whole city. These are manifestations of how we interact with these assets. You could be interacting with it in a physical sense, interacting with it in a digital sense, and this interplay is very important and very useful. When we're saying transformation, and this is just that I'm trying to explain the terminology in the title of the manuscript, the idea is that the digital will become physical, physical can become digital. So if you have a 3D model of an asset, let's say a building, because we're used to thinking of buildings, after construction becomes physical, and you can also do some scanning of that building and make it digital again. So there's a transformation of information about that asset from being digital to physical, physical to digital, digital and physical, etc. Another transformation would be about, is it targeted and actual? Something that you want to deliver is delivered, and then something that you want to change becomes targeted, and then you change, it becomes physical, and on and go. You design, you construct, you redesign, you reconstruct, you demolish, you reconstruct. Something targeted and actual is a transformation of information. It's not just a transformation of the asset. And also transformation, what's needed and what's available, and I'll explain this in a couple of slides later on. Now, when discussing exchange, and this is really where the Light framework relies a lot on something called active network theory. Meaning there's a lot to learn from that theory, but the idea is that really all actors need to be treated the same. Whether the actor managing this information is a human, and there is a human-to-human interaction, or whether that actor is a machine, meaning it could be a robot, it could be a cyborg, a combination between a machine and a human. And this is no longer science fiction, is starting to happen, so we have to deal with it in our information frameworks. So the exchange is not always between humans. Of course not. It could be between the human and a system, and between a system and a system. And the framework takes, a good care of not to antagonize, not to, discriminate against robots, against actors who are not human. At the same time, it needs to account for human actors, and it is a framework for human actors as they interact with other actors. Quick overview. It's not going to be enough, so let's see what we can do. So this is an overview of the light framework. Okay, blue and pink and circles, and I don't know what. There's so much into within this image alone, but funny enough, it summarizes a lot of concepts. I'm going to try to take you through them as much as I can. So what are these components? There's many. I mean, there's 10 main ones. Okay, I'm gonna, as much as possible, try to explain some of these in the short time available. Statuses and states, milestones and gates. We could write a song about the light framework, and it could be a hit. Let's start with the first one. What's the difference between, two different statuses? It's very important. At the very basic level, we need to deal with information. Okay, and now if you remember, information about the world, information about the physical asset, information about the digital asset, all could be either targeted, something that you want and you need, you intend to deliver, and something which is actual. And there's a line separating them. A difference between I want this, I want to build it, I know it's built. Okay, this is as basic as it is. And the understanding that every asset, whether physical or digital, will have these states, and they will change these states very quickly, is very important for the working of the framework. Because as I said at the beginning, for the framework to be more useful, it needs at the end to be delivered as a tool. Okay, and the intention behind the Light framework is to deliver a tool, and that tool is an open access digital platform for all to use. I'll explain this a little bit more later on. So that's the first one. Let's go to the second one. When we're dealing with information, we have three states. One we call the purposes state. What's the purpose of delivering any asset? And then what is this deliverable that we want, to deliver? So what is it? What are its properties? And then what are the resources and methods needed for that deliverable? I want to deliver a car or a pump or a building, okay? To deliver that, what are the resources, the materials, what are the methods of production, what the methods of procurement, all these things that need to be defined. And the word defined is very important. As I mentioned before about maturity, everything that needs to be managed needs to be first defined. So the idea here in these states that we need to define the purpose, define the deliverable as clearly, as accurately as possible, and then define the resources and methods needed to generate that deliverable. We go to the third, component, and this, again, it combines the first two by saying, above the line, we have the target, below the line, we have the actual, we have the purposes, we have the deliverables, we have the defined resources and methods. Here, it just becomes a little bit more specific. So we're saying, for information to flow across the life cycle of an asset, it goes through 8 milestones. And the claim is, or what the Light framework claims, that these milestones are natural. They're not made up. I did not make them up. We did not just pluck them out of thin air. They are there, and this is just a description of them. That's the claim. Okay, someone will come, no, you missed a milestone, or you have to add this or remove this. That's great. Please come back with your suggestions about whether these milestones are not natural. They're not as they appear in the wild, and we're trying to describe them. Of course, the way we describe them is based on our previous research about how we want to use them. but the claim is that these are the natural milestones. So what are these milestones? First, you have to have an intention to deliver something. Okay, so you want to deliver an asset. I have an intention to deliver a hospital. And then, okay, so we say, fine, what then you need to define that deliverable, where is it located, how many, levels, how many operating theaters, etc. You need to define it, define the deliverable, all its performance deliverables, its physical deliverables, spatial, etc. Now, anything worth doing nowadays, if it's not a cabin, at the top of a hill that you want to build yourself, it needs to be done in a digital way, need to be managed in a digital way. So here, the light framework, if you want, isolates that it only caters for assets that require some kind of digital exchange. So you cannot apply to build a sand castle on the beach. Okay, you cannot, or you don't need to apply it if you want. If you're an owner builder sitting at the top of the hill, you have an axe and you're cutting down trees that you're allowed to cut, and you're building your cabin. It applies to assets that need some kind of digital asset alongside the physical asset. So after you define the physical asset, you need to define the digital deliverables. What models do I need? What documents do I need? What data sets I need to exchange, etc. And compare them to really the physical asset or deliverable I need to deliver. So I want a hospital. To deliver this hospital, I need 3D models and 2D documentation, and I need plans for patient rooms. I need this, I need that, etc. So really here you're describing the digital deliverables, whether the models, documents, or data sets needed to deliver the physical asset that you need. After that, and this is the natural progression, you need to say, okay, if this is what we need, we really need to define the resources and methods. So I need someone who can build a hospital, someone with experience. I need to use this procurement method. I want this production method, etc., etc. So we define the needed resources and methods, and we're dealing with these assets as if it's where we go through this progression as if this is the first time we build that asset. Now, if we're building that asset, for the second time or the third time or more, there's different ways of doing it. I'm going to explain this in the next, in a future component. So after defining the purpose, the physical asset, the digital asset that needs to be delivered, the digital deliverable for that asset, and the resources are needed, now the execution starts. First, we have to, I need these resources. Now we do our procurement, we do our qualification, we select our methods, and now we have the actual or available resources and methods that we really can deploy. So sometimes not everything that we want to deploy is available. The resources could be missing, the competencies could be missing. So really, it's about what's available. And now from that on, we are in the actual side. We are delivering the digital assets. From the digital assets, we are using to deliver the physical assets. And then after that, we reach milestone 8, which here, it's another about purpose and intent. Do we intend to demolish this asset? Do you intend to refurbish it, reuse it, recycle it? All these decisions are there. Now, another thing here before moving to the next slide is the principle of couples. And this is very important. If you're looking at the whole life cycle, it's very important to compare the initial intent with the intent at the end, because these feed into each other. It's very important to be able to compare the expected physical deliverables with the actual physical deliverables. We call this the physical couple, because this will tell us if there's a deviation between what is delivered with what was expected. Also the same when it comes to digital couple, comparing what was delivered all the models, all the, the model uses, all the documents, compared to what was intended, what was targeted, was, something not delivered. So someone asks, I want to do cost estimation based on models, and then the cost estimation is delivered based on documents, then there's something, missing. And this coupling, digital couple, allows us to do it. Another couple here is the difference between what we wanted to resource to be used, what kind of methods needed to be deployed, and what actually was deployed. These are very important couple because it's about measurement, it's about validation and verification. There's also two more couples, and these, couple between the physical deliverable and digital deliverable. Of course, I've explained this before. They need to be coupled, meaning you don't want to deliver the digital things, or really plan to deliver the digital things which do not serve the physical output. And one of the things that became famous now, nowadays, which is the assets couple, and what people refer to as digital twin, assets couple are a little bit more broader than a digital twin, but the idea is we could compare, we could replicate, we could manage, by coupling the digital asset and the physical asset. Okay, and this coupling works both ways. You could have a digital representation of an asset that becomes physical, through construction fabrication, but also the physical asset could be made digital through, laser scanning, connecting to IoTs, etc. These couples are natural, they're not made up, and they are very powerful in allowing measurement, verification, and validation. I think I'm eating through the time, so I'm gonna speed up a bit. The idea now here in information flow 4 is that, when we go from these milestones from 1 to 8, and we continue, we go through gates, and these gates control the flow of information. And the framework defines 4 different flows that need to be controlled. A forward flow, it's called execution. So once you are executing, let's say, if people understand these two things more than they understand the others. So if you have a digital and you want to execute to become physical, so you have a 3D model, then you will make it a physical model. So you have a 3D model of a pump, and then you manufacture it, and you have a physical pump. But there's also a reverse flow. It's about management, to see if what was delivered was according to what was specified. What is physical confirms or conforms with what it was digital. And this is true for any movement backwards. So the framework here defines any movement forward as execution and any movement backwards as measurement, and they come together, they're coupled. They're not disjointed like other frameworks. It's not like you have different stages and then you have a testing phase. No, for every step forward, there is a step backwards, reverse step. Every movement towards execution must be coupled with a measurement step to see if what was executed was according to what was specified. There's also 2 more directions of flow. One's called integration, which goes inward, or capturing, and one's called sharing, which goes outward. I will explain this in a different slide. But these 4 are connected together. And if you have time, these gates are really important because they use actually agile approaches in managing these flows. Now, another very important differentiation between the light approach and all other approaches is the embedding of the idea of automation, or the concepts of automation, or the prospects of automation within the framework. It's not like an afterthought. It is it's built inside it. You go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you are using computer assisted, meaning if you're doing an asset, and you're using some kind of digital means, you need to define the physical asset and then define the digital deliverables, the resource and method, etc. But what about if we're doing this again? What about if we're building the same building and in a at a different site, let's say, or repeating the generation of the same pump? If this is the case, we really don't need to define the resources and methods because we've already defined them. We're just repeating the delivery of that asset. Okay. If this is the case, and there's more other cases, we really don't need to go through 4 and 5. And this is what's called the route 2 or the automatic route. Okay, it's no longer about going through this because you don't need it. It's already predefined. Same thing. What about if we have a really artificial intelligence enabled robot that we could tell them to build a bridge across the river with these properties? Okay, and this is not too far off. Okay, you can say, I want a bridge. I want it to carry these numbers of cars per I don't know what the load. This is dynamic load, static load, etc. And we could imagine. Doesn't have to be tomorrow. We could imagine that this system, this actor, would be able to calculate everything that needs to be calculated, use the resources and methods, autonomously, and to build that bridge for us. Okay. In that case, we don't need digital deliverables. We don't need them to be targeted. We don't need them to be delivered. We don't need to define the resources and method because the autonomous player, that very smart robot which is coming to help us, not to kill us, will be able to do this autonomously. And this is very important. This is not far off. And you don't have to think of assets again. Just to remind you, don't have to think of assets as these huge structures, bridges and buildings. It could be a small asset. It is now, you can now ask an autonomous player, a 3D printer enabled by artificial intelligence and let's say machine learning, to deliver for you a small piece of equipment to serve a specific function autonomously. You just give it the material, you define what you need, and voila, you get it. You can get that asset. Now the framework allows for that. It allows for these different routes, okay, which could happen at the same time. Assisted, the long route, automated or automatic, the shorter route, and autonomous, the shortest route. Now, we go to the component number 6. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this one because it needs a little bit more time. The idea is that when we're doing any kind of iteration, we go through loops. And this is really derived from the agile approach to what's called sprints, but it's applied here to assets. The idea is let's say we say we want to deliver some kind of 3D model cost estimation, and we discovered that there is needed some change for that cost estimation, that our assumptions were wrong. We have to repeat it. That's we call this a short loop. We're still within the design. So during the design, there's lots of iterations or loops. What about to deliver something which is not fit for purpose? That's a longer loop. We have to go back to defining the physical deliverable, to the digital deliverable, etc., and do a long loop. Now, and the longest or full loop is really the life cycle of the asset itself, the reuse, etc. Now, there's other concepts to cover here about, the connection between delivering the physical asset and intent to reuse it. There is something here called the life extender. This life extender extends the framework from to cover a project life cycle to an asset life cycle. And there's something called the life cycle connector that connects the end of one cycle to the start of another. So you are using a piece of equipment for one reason, and you refurbish it, and you change your intent, you change your specifications, you change that equipment or you change that asset, and now it has another life cycle. Okay, we'll start again. In the framework, you'll notice that any connection between these milestones will have a forward and reverse action. Again, these can be easily defined at high level and at lower levels, and you will see with the presentation by Professor Regina that she will cover some of these actions. So here we're going from 1 to 2. We have forward 1, 2. From 2 to 3, there's forward 2, 3 at the same time. There's reverse 3, 2. From 3 to 6, etc. And you will find in the document, in the manuscript that I'm hoping that you will download and read and provide your suggestions and questions. These are defined. How what are the main actions to go from one milestone to the other, and from that milestone in reverse when it comes to measurement. In the manuscript, the capturing and sharing activities are not covered, but it will be in a future paper. One very important concept also of the framework is the concept of shortcuts. Now, when people hear shortcuts, they run to the doors, okay? Oh, no, people are taking shortcuts. No, shortcuts on their own are neither good or bad, okay? Actually, the life cycle information transformation, the light framework or light approach encourages valid shortcuts, okay? There are valid shortcuts and risky shortcuts. So valid shortcuts are shortcuts that satisfy the requirements of taking these shortcuts. But if you take a shortcut which is not allowed, meaning you're trying to skip important things, you are taking risks. The more you skip, the more you increase or you compound the risk. So for example, let's say myself and my wife and daughters, we want to, I don't know, build a cubby house in the background, and we want to do it in digital mode, etc. We don't have to define the needed resources. We know who they are, correctly. This is from the intention, so we can skip that step. Okay. Some things do not need a digital deliverable. It could be because that specific small asset is it's just gonna be, I don't know, made by hand, and as part of the whole thing. We could skip defining that digital deliverable, etc. And you will find in the paper the valid reasons and the risks from skipping certain milestones. Now, skipping a milestone is not banned in the framework. It could be even encouraged. It just depends if you have a valid reason or you don't have a valid reason. Okay, so let's take for an example of valid reason 2, meaning to skip milestone 2. This is valid if no physical assets are targeted for design or delivery within the current information cycle or loop. And again, remember, you could have multiple loops for smaller assets. Don't always think of asset as the big building. It could be one column, okay? It could be one floor. It could be one building within a campus. But also there's a potential risk for missing that, which is the risk of delivering a physical asset that do not match the demand entity's original intent. Okay, so unless you know what you're doing, you cannot skip a milestone. Now we go to component number 9. I promise there's only 2 more, and this is also one of the things important about the light approach is that it does not look at information as if they are documents. There is no definition of, let's start with I don't know, organization information requirement, and then asset information requirement, and then I don't know what, exchange information requirement, and then you have AIM and PIM, and I really no longer can keep track of all this. It deals with information flow. Information flow from one milestone to another is just an aggregation and disintegration or integration of information. So you could start with, you could imagine you're doing a simple asset. You could start with why you want to deliver this I don't know who said hospital. It could be 10 questions. Okay, that's the purpose. Then it becomes 100 or 1,000 fields to define the specifications of that digital deliverable for that hospital. Then it could be another 200 fields to collect information about the digital requirements for delivering that hospital. And then it would be another 200 fields about the resources and methods, etc. And now when we go to the actual, so from the target to the actual, we're starting to populate this information, adding more information, removing more information. The information is growing as we go along the routes. Okay, it's the same approach to collecting information, irrespective of what you're doing. The only difference would be what are you collecting and when. And the way that the framework deals with this is by creating a unified pool, but which is collected through sets. So we start with set A, which covers the intent and the purpose and the specification. Then a set B, which really tries to match the digital deliverables with the physical deliverables, and set C tries to match the physical and digital intended deliverables, what the resources are needed, and 4 and 5 here set D to try to establish what are the real available resources compared, and etc., etc. So the idea is the information is growing, it's flowing, it's being enriched, it's being reduced, but it's the same pool. It's not really, we're not using documents to manage our information. Information flows, it's connected to knowledge of humans, connected to data streams. And this is really the idea, and you can read about this more in the paper. The idea of the last component is about of what information to collect. Some information are not needed. They are outside our area of concern, and these need just to be referenced, like how you reference a code or a standard. But also some information needs to be defined and included in our common information environment. And some information needs to be managed through our process, and other information need to be integrated, etc. So not all information are needed or is needed. And the information that is needed, some of them, they're needed just to be collated in a harmonized way. Other information need to be managed through a system, and others need to be integrated. And of course, further optimized. I think I'm run out of time. So really the framework introduces lots of metrics. Two main ones: integration metric. You can read about it, how information goes from reference to optimized, and autonomy, or the idea is that the activities could be manual, assisted, automated, automatic, or autonomous. Also, these are metrics. I'm just gonna go to summary, quick summary. What does the framework offers? Of course, it learns from all other methods and philosophies and all these approaches, but the framework is not, it's not intended to be a philosophy. It's not a philosophy. If it is, it will fail as a philosophy. It is a practical solution aimed as delivering a platform. Okay, it is not a method. It's not a method. It claims to be a natural progression of information, just explains them in a way that is measurable and predictable. Okay, so over time you would be able to predict information flow if you're using like the same type of asset, etc. If you're going through all these loops and routes, you'll be able to predict. So what does in summary, what does the light framework offer? It's an open knowledge structure, under Creative Commons. It has different parts, and you will see, very important part, explained later on. It's actor agnostic, procurement agnostic. You can apply any kind of procurement model to it, from traditional contracts to IPD and etc. Domain agnostic, assets doesn't have to be buildings or anything, could be anything, could be any kind of asset, which even some things coming from different domains, like manufacturing. Asset scale independent. It allows for all information flows, computer assisted, autonomous, automatic. It moves beyond twins to couples, and couples, it's much more flexible than the concept of twins because it allows decoupling and partial coupling, etc. There's lots of things about coupling that can be discussed. I haven't discussed this today, but the idea is the way it deals with assets allows its tokenization, meaning dealing with an asset as a token that can be exchange, it could be connected, whether through centralized ledgers, centralized databases, or distributed ledgers, or what's called blockchain, if you want. Treats execution and measurement equally. It's not like a phase. Measurement is not a phase. It is every action has a measurement reverse action. It integrates different types of flows: execution, forward, measurement, capturing of data into environments, sharing. I didn't cover sharing today, but the idea is sharing through exporting, through sharing knowledge as well, which I didn't cover today. It has a very it has an agile activity engine at its heart within the gates. I did not cover this in detail today. Allows, encourages, let's say allows taking shortcuts to reduce process waste. This is very important. Process waste is one of the worst things that have happened to us since the introduction of BIM. BIM has had lots of advantages, but it also causes a lot of digital and process waste. There's a model activity flows. This will be covered by the Regina later on. I did not cover this, but the idea is the framework connects information flows to data streams and also to knowledge exchanges. Unified pool of information. It is semantically consistent. Why? Because this is based on a different project called the dictionary. Every term in the framework is connected to an online dictionary, which is available in multiple languages, including Portuguese. International by design. This is not done for Australia first and then we make it international. Like many things that it's not done. It's done international by default, by design, etc. There's an audit trail, etc. It's optimized for delivering open access platforms, and actually I repeat this twice somewhere. Embeds metrics, etc. And this is the repetition. This is when you finish your slides late. That's what happens. Now, food for thought. Integration of information across an asset lifecycle depends on, very importantly, clear definition of needed information. If you don't have clear definition, you really can't manage that. So if you have clear definition of needed information, you can manage that. And if you can manage that, if you have definition and you can properly manage it, you can integrate that information. So if you don't have defined information, you cannot manage it. If you don't manage information, you cannot integrate it. Okay, and if you don't manage information and integrate it, there's no hope of supply chain integration. So we can only integrate our supply chain in our industry by focusing, fixing, improving, continuously optimizing our information integration behaviors. That will lead us to supply chain integration. So if we can't improve our industry to become vertically integrated, because it's impossible for our industry, we can definitely work hard and attempt and hopefully succeed in integrated information, which really takes us a long way towards supply chain integration. This is very quick. Extending this would be through the community effort, and we're always looking for supporters and sponsors. There's lots of things that still to be developed. We're looking for collaborators. We're looking to start testing. My colleague Eric Poirier in Quebec, he's starting some of this testing, first theoretical testing, and then it will be on location testing. And we want to attract a sponsor for the digital platform, because this is built to deliver an open access platform. All right, so this is based on initiative. Please go to bimexcellence.org and look at different projects. So we have the dictionary, we have all these things, and I'm presenting today as part of Project F. Sorry, I cannot cover this in any detail, but the Light Framework is part of Project F. This is Project A, the dictionary. Please visit, or maybe Regina will maybe touch upon this later on. Project F, which covers the framework, has lots of micro projects in it. One of the micro projects we refer to as F2, Model Use Template, and is led by a group of Amazonians that you will learn about shortly. And I finish by thanking Baris Neto, the organizers, the sponsors, everyone, and inviting you to attend our first Excellence Seminar, for the BIM initiative. We have it over 3 days, the 24th, the 25th, and 26th, at 8 a.m. This is my time to, to make you all wake up early. So between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., Sao Paulo, 3 days, we'll be covering all these projects I just mentioned. And thank you again.
Barros Neto, you are muted.
Barros Neto.
Yes.
O microfone está desligado.
Yes. It's this problem with a digital word. Thanks so much, Suker, for your presentation. It's a very, very challenging for us. It's a very, very smart. Thank you so much. And now, Regina, por favor, sua vez agora.
Ok. Bom, primeiro agradeço o convite, dizer que é uma honra estar aqui falando ao lado do Bilal Suker. E vamos lá, vamos começar. Eu vou pedir para vocês, enquanto eu estiver falando, vocês lembrarem então da apresentação do Light Framework, que em português seria Framework Lite, né? Light Framework. Presta atenção nas palavras propósito, purpose, entrega, deliverable, resource and methods, que são os recursos e métodos. Presta atenção em modelo, dados e documentos, model, data, documents. Presta atenção em ativos, e também em open knowledge structure, em sharing knowledge, né? Porque tudo que o Bilal Suker acabou de falar de uma forma muito bem colocada, que eu vejo como ser a solução da falta de integração, da fragmentação da indústria da construção civil, né? O que ele apresentou é a solução que a gente quer, como a gente imagina a construção civil desfragmentada, né? Com a informação fluindo. O que eu vou apresentar para vocês vão ver, é um tijolo desse processo. É um tijolo fundamental desse processo, tá? E tudo que ele, de certa forma, mas não como ele colocou, tá? Está presente, então, no que eu vou apresentar. Então, eu vou apresentar para vocês o projeto F2, que é denominado Model Use Templates. Se eu fosse traduzir para português, Model Use Templates, eu diria gabaritos de usos do BIM. Ou nós já incorporamos a palavra template em português, templates de usos do modelo, tá? Vocês notam que o Suker, ele, de certa forma, já vê a indústria da arquitetura, engenharia e construção com BIM incorporado. Então, a palavra BIM não existe mais. Sumiu o BIM. Então, eu não tenho mais usos do BIM, eu tenho usos do modelo. Ele entende, né, o modelo digital, o modelo físico, né, visto como um asset. Aqui está o grupo que desenvolveu o que eu vou apresentar. Nós somos liderados pela Fernanda, que fez mestrado na Unicamp, atualmente trabalha na Autodesk, a Fernanda Machado. Também está conosco a Lorena Moreira, que é professora na UFBA. Temos a Paula Mota, que é de Fortaleza, da Cipro, e recentemente integrou-se ao grupo o Bruno, também da Cipro, Bruno Mota, tá? E também tem conosco o Bilal, e nós somos um grupo que é feito de acadêmicos e profissionais da arquitetura, engenharia e construção. Então, vou falar de model uses, né? Então, vou falar de model uses que, às vezes, nas transparências, vão aparecer como MU. Toda vez que eu estiver me referindo a model uses, na verdade, eu estou falando de usos do BIM. Estou falando de aplicações do BIM em processos específicos. Essas aplicações do BIM em processos específicos são esses Domain Model Uses, que na iniciativa BIM-E são listados em 76 Model Uses, Domain Model Uses. Esses usos específicos são, então, distribuídos em categorias de captura e representação, de planejamento e projeto, de simulação, quantificação, construção e fabricação, operação e manutenção, monitoramento e controle e o link, né, com e uma visão estendida desses modelos, né? E aqui eu trouxe exemplos específicos desses 76 model uses, que é a documentação 2D. Então, você extrair a documentação de um modelo BIM é uma aplicação do modelo. Fazer o planejamento da construção mediado por BIM é um model use. Fazer a detecção de interferências, né, durante o processo de projeto é um model use. Fazer a fabricação de formas, a gestão de ativos, automação predial e a interface do BIM com a internet das coisas são todos exemplos de model uses. Agora, os model uses, eles eles fazem parte, com toda a implementação BIM, tá? Dentro dela tem a definição de model uses, né? Então, todo plano de implementação BIM, todo plano de execução BIM, tem dentro dele a grande necessidade de você especificar, então, que model uses você quer fazer uso de. Esses model uses são processos complexos, eles são partes específicas da nossa prática. A orçamentação, o cálculo estrutural, né? A autoria, né? onde saia a concepção do projeto. E esses model uses, que são processos, na verdade, complexos, são descritos de forma superficial pela maioria das referências que nós temos hoje. Mas aqui eu gosto de fazer uma ligação com o BIM Dictionary, que é um projeto da iniciativa BIM-E, tá? O BIM Dictionary estabelece uma base para o conhecimento compartilhado. Então, os model uses aparecem dentro do BIM Dictionary como termos que têm ali a sua descrição. Mas, por serem termos, né, processos complexos, se nós descrevermos esses model uses de uma forma mais detalhada, e se nós agregarmos essa descrição dos model uses ao BIM Dictionary, a gente tem valor agregado de uma forma compartilhada, aberta. Mas como são tantos, né, são todos partes da nossa prática é como mostrou o Zucker, contínua, né, que vai em vários sentidos, no sentido de executar, no sentido reverso de medir, né? Somente é possível a gente fazer essa descrição detalhada de todos os model uses, né, se nós tivermos a contribuição de muitos. Então, vou explicar o que o model use pretende. O que o template, né, o que esse gabarito para um model use pretende. Ele pretende educar, avaliar e auxiliar. Educar, avaliar e auxiliar indivíduos e organizações. Educar sobre os benefícios, avaliar as capacidades de entrega e auxiliar o desenvolvimento de competências, cada um sobre um model use específico. Agora, falando sobre a linha do tempo desse microprojeto F2. Tudo começou em 2018, quando a Fernanda recebeu o convite do Zucker para iniciar esse projeto. A Fernanda, então, chamou a mim, a Lorena e a Paula E junto com o Zucker e mais o Eric, praticamente por 1 ano e meio, nós ficamos fazendo não, primeiro era só nós 4 e o Zucker. Fizemos o desenvolvimento da conceitualização. O que seria esse template para descrever o model use? Qual era a estrutura conceitual, as informações que deviam estar ali, como elas deviam estar classificadas, categorizadas, como elas eram representadas em forma de propriedades e seus campos. Terminado isso, então nós aplicamos o template para descrever um model use específico, que no caso foi detecção de interferências. E foi feito um desenvolvimento no Bing Dictionary, que já estava online, para ele incorporar, então, essa forma estendida de apresentar a informação. Em 2020, então, nós começamos a pensar numa estratégia de como multiplicar, esse efeito de multiplicação, aplicar o Model Use Template para todos os 76 Model Users, né? Então, nós pensamos como recrutar pessoas, como que equipe deveria ser essa, que ferramentas que essas pessoas iam precisar, que documentos que de partidas elas precisariam, como nós faríamos a gestão disso. Então, no momento, nós estamos iniciando um processo de uma gestão piloto. E, a partir de 2021, então, iniciar o processo de desenvolvimento para descrever os 76 model uses segundo esse template e incorporar ao Bing Dictionary. Agora, então, aqui uma visão do que é o template. O template, ele descreve o model use como uma informação estruturada em categorias, propriedades e campos. As categorias são básicas, avançadas, de desenho de fluxos de atividade e referências. Então, agora eu vou mostrar esse template sendo aplicado para o clash detection, para a identificação ou detecção de interferências, que dentro da categorização dos model uses, ele é chamado de 40-40. Então, falando das propriedades básicas, o que são? Uma identificação e uma breve descrição do model use. Mostrando aqui para clash detection, tá? Então, aqui primeiro o conjunto de identificação. Que série ela participa? Então, participa da Simulation and Quantifying, simulação e quantificação. Qual é o número da série e o número do model use? Então, 4.000, depois do 4.040. Qual é o título? Clash Detection, detecção de interferências, a versão que está atualmente, e a Short Description, a descrição breve. Essa descrição breve aqui, ela é a descrição breve que já existia em português no Bing Dictionary. Então, no Bing Dictionary está dito que a detecção de interferências é um uso do modelo, representando o uso do modelo 3D para coordenar diferentes disciplinas e para identificar e resolver possíveis conflitos entre elementos virtuais antes da construção ou fabricação. Aqui eu tenho o link para o Bing Dictionary. Depois, propósito. Qual é o propósito? Purpose. É fornecer modelos BIM que, dentro do linguajar do Bing Dictionary, é denominado de BIM Models. Então, fornecer modelos BIM livres de interferências, identificar problemas na fase de projeto, verificar se há interferências entre sistemas e componentes, então, verificar no ativo digital, melhorar a colaboração entre a equipe de trabalho e entre equipes de projeto e acompanhar a resolução do conflito. Então, ele faz esses são todos os propósitos, né? Então, eu não só quero encontrar a interferência, mas eu quero acompanhar a solução daquela interferência. E com isso, tá, gerar, né, colaboração entre os envolvidos. Propriedades avançadas. As propriedades avançadas são descrição dos recursos de suporte do modelo BIM. Então aqui a gente vê, né, resources. Então, os recursos são documentos, dados, sistemas, softwares, equipamentos e métodos. E na próxima slide eu vou mostrar exemplo de software e métodos. Então aqui a gente tem a tabela de todos os possíveis recursos em termos de software necessários para desenvolver esse model use específico. Essa tabela, eu vou clicar, ela está colocada, disponível em forma de Airtable, em que eu posso, então, aqui, filtrar e ver, fazer sort, agrupar informação, né? E a gente já vê aqui uma evolução do uso dessa tabela. Essa tabela ela vai aumentar enquanto model uses novos forem descritos no template, e eu vou ver para um software específico a lista de todos os model uses que esse software dá suporte a. Então, quando eu chegar no final dos 76 model uses colocados em forma de template, eu tenho essa tabela completa e eu começo agora a ter noção de o que um software específico, em quantos usos ele pode me dar suporte a, né? Aqui também eu tenho uma descrição genérica do método, tá? Que método de gestão de qualidade. Então, super interessante a gente entender que a detecção de interferências faz parte da gestão de qualidade. E que existem métodos específicos, né? Deixa eu ver. Perdi aqui, wait a minute. Não. Ixi, bom. Então, deixa eu voltar aqui. Ok. E fluxo, a próxima propriedade, a próxima categoria é fluxo de atividades, onde a gente faz, então, a explanação das atividades necessárias para executar um model use. Aqui, então, a gente tem, dentro dessa propriedade, a atividade colocada em forma de fluxo, tá? E para cada uma das atividades, a gente tem a descrição dela em 3 níveis. Essa aqui foi a propriedade que mais nos deu trabalho, né? E que mais nos faz revisar e compreender esse uso e revisar todas as outras propriedades. Aqui ela é disponibilizada no Bing Dictionary como um diagrama feito em Draw.io. Então, aqui eu agora já fui para o Bing Dictionary, tá vendo? Já estou no Bing Dictionary, já estou no termo Clash Detection, que tem aqui uma descrição lateral que tem a ver com as propriedades do template, né? E já tenho aqui a minha table, a minha Airtable para Software Tools. E aqui eu posso entrar, visualizar o meu fluxo de forma maximizada e entender. Vale a pena dizer que para chegar nesse fluxo, nós passamos por um ciclo de conversa com o Zucker bastante estressante. Porque enquanto a gente não chegou no fluxo que fosse o mais linear possível, e é muito difícil colocar um uso dentro de uma descrição linear, com o mínimo de loops existentes, a gente não conseguia receber um ok do Zucker. E esse estresse que ele nos fez passar foi muito interessante, porque agora a gente chegou num fluxo muito macro e importante. E também ele também guia qualquer um que queira criar uma disciplina que fale de compatibilização de projetos em Bing. Ele sabe exatamente o que ele deve ensinar. Ele deve começar pela estratégia, né? Qual vai ser a estratégia dele de definição de encontrar as interferências. Depois ele tem que preparar os modelos, os monomodelos, né? Depois ele tem que preparar o modelo para federar, para juntar. Depois ele tem que fazer o modelo federado junto, estar consistente. Ele tem que executar a interferência. Ele tem que fazer análise das interferências e ir para a solução da interferência. Geralmente, todos os vídeos que nós encontramos, que são free e explicam como fazer uma clash detection, geralmente estão num momento específico de performar, de executar a interferência. Mas fazer o model use, executar esse information flow, tá? Realmente você tem que passar por todas essas etapas. Eu posso chegar aqui, tá? Exportar. E aí ele me leva para dentro do Draw.io, tá? Onde eu, então, tenho acesso... Deixa eu ver aqui, ele não me levou no momento. Não me levou. Deixa eu vir para cá. Bom, ele me leva para dentro do...
Yeah, maybe press the edit the pencil.
It's because I have the share and the stop of the, which doesn't let me go to the...
If you go back to the dictionary, Regina, and press on the pencil. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yes. Ok. So, aí eu recebo aqui o diagrama feito em Draw.io, onde eu posso, então, agora adaptar para o meu fluxo na minha empresa. Por isso que isso aqui é chamado de um template, ele é um gabarito. Ele é um gabarito muito detalhado, mas que você, quando abaixa e faz uso dele na sua empresa, você pode se apropriar, faz uso dele no ensino, você pode adaptar, se apropriar ele, mas tendo um ponto de partida comum, ok? Cada uma dessas atividades dentro do template são descritas, né? Então, eu tenho definir a estratégia de detecção de conflitos. Eu tenho que identificar os pré-requisitos de detecção, identificar pré-requisitos do modelo, identificar pré-requisitos da documentação, identificar pré-requisitos do conjunto de dados. Então, a gente vê aqui o lead, o framework lead, presente nesse fluxo de informação, né? E eu tenho esse detalhamento em formas de atividades para todo o meu flow desenhado. Aqui também eu posso, vou mostrar isso ao final, mas eu posso exportar, fazer um link, posso fazer um export. Is it here where I export? Yeah. Eu posso exportar aquela visão esquemática, né, do template, mas agora aqui em forma textual, né? Ela está aqui em forma textual representada. A gente levantou muitas referências em termos de artigo de periódicos, capítulos de livro e esforços similares. Depois que nós passamos por esse processo de aplicar o template para o model use de detecção de interferências, nós fizemos uma avaliação externa. Aplicamos, né, mostramos essa forma de descrever o model use para uma turma de alunos da pós-graduação da Arquitetura, Tecnologia e Cidade da Unicamp e fizemos uma dinâmica de SWOT, de forças, oportunidades, fraquezas e ameaças. E dessa dinâmica saiu os ali presentes, arquitetos e engenheiros, indicaram que esse template, essa forma de escrever model use, era detalhada, direta, prática, didática, clara, padronizada. A oportunidade, escassez de literatura sobre o assunto, então tem uma demanda, né, e tem uma demanda de padronização. Fraquezas. Bom, a fraqueza está grande aqui, né? Poxa, seria bom que tivesse a força muito grande, mas nesse SWOT a fraqueza foi desenvolvimento complexo, requer muita experiência, visão detalhada e global ao mesmo tempo, muita informação é necessária, usa linguagem própria e requer introdução. Nas ameaças, ações semelhantes, tempo de desenvolvimento para todos os MUs e uma interface hostil. Então, levando em consideração esse SWOT, o que você hoje vê no Bing Dictionary é 1/4 daquilo que nós desenvolvemos no primeiro desenvolvimento, que já foi enxugado para apresentar no esquema conceitual que eu apresentei no início dessa apresentação e que ainda foi mais enxugado ainda para deixar disponível para o público, tá? Para tornar essa forma a essência da essência, tornar ela como um conhecimento compartilhado. Depois que nós passarmos, né, depois que nós aplicarmos o Model Use Template para os 76 Model Uses, eu vou poder ter uma noção de métodos. Então, quais são os métodos aplicados, quais são os métodos compartilhados entre os Model Users. Vou ter uma noção de compartilhamento de dados. Então, o Zucker não falou de piscinas de informação? Eu vou começar a conseguir enxergar as piscinas de informação aqui quando eu olhar, né, compartilhamento de informação entre os usos, né? Então, eu vou ter um conhecimento compartilhado, mas eu também vou ter interfaces mais esclarecidas, né? Então, a gente entende que o conhecimento compartilhado, essas interfaces esclarecidas, permitirão exatamente aquilo que a gente tinha como objetivo inicial, que é educar. Então, esse material fica disponível, ele é fonte de consulta ou de inspiração de treinamentos, né? Avaliar a capacidade. Então, se eu quero contratar um serviço, eu olho antes esse material e vejo se aquilo que está sendo proposto está minimamente parecido com o que está aqui. Eu posso usar também isso aqui para auxiliar o desenvolvimento de competências, né? E aqui, então, eu faço muito obrigado ao Zucker por nos chamar, esse grupo, para passar por esse desafio tremendo, porque eu, como professora que orientei doutorados e mestrados, fui desafiada, muitas vezes desafiada a pensar fora da caixa, a pensar muito longe, a pensar diferente. Com certeza esse grupo aqui fez o mesmo, tá? Recentemente o Bruno se agregou ao grupo para nós, então, fazermos agora a replicação disso para todos os Model Users. E, então, eu agradeço, né? E digo que eu estou aqui como uma professora da Universidade Estadual de Campinas, mas eu também estou aqui como um membro do Bing Excellence Organization, né? Que é uma organização que envolve uma comunidade de voluntários, né? Onde a gente pode se aplicar e a gente pode participar de uma forma onde você é estressado para chegar muito mais longe do que você imagina e entregar, então, essa open knowledge, né? Participar desse processo de criar open knowledge. E assim eu termino. Parar de fazer um share.
Marco fora. Obrigado, Regina, pela palestra e a explicação muito boas. Eu acho que foi bastante complementar, né, ao que o Zucker apresentou. Então, acho que realmente vocês aí trabalharam em conjunto. Acho que isso é muito interessante. Nós temos aqui, no momento, 3 perguntas. E eu vou fazer aqui as perguntas. Uma é do Sávio, from UFBA, Federal da Bahia, né, para o Zucker, ok? What Zucker would suggest to Brazilian research who are interested in testing and validate these conceptual foundations? Okay, one question. There are more one. There is more one. Eu vou fazer agora em português. do Douglas Brito. Você já analisou o modelo Light? Poderia se integrar a outros frameworks de implementação do BIM? Esse aí é para a Regina e para o Suca. E tem um da Bianca, né? Bianca Vieira. Como dividir os templates para seus respectivos model use? Temos diversas disciplinas, diversos níveis de detalhamento e 76 usos de modelo. Também é para os dois. Ok? Quem responde? Suca, please.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed the first one. If you don't mind repeating it in English.
I think he asked, how can we Brazilians
interest to test and validate the conceptual foundations.
The framework.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an open invitation for everyone. Brazilians at of course, the forefront, but for everyone around the world to look at the framework as a framework, a skeleton that people could build on top. The way it works is the framework provides a base. It offers a language through the dictionary. It offers a few templates, a few metrics, and for people to contribute by extending the framework. So, okay, so the framework has all these different parts. One part, for example, is the part discussed by Regina, a model use template. What is a model use template? I'm just going to take just one step back. So what is a model use template when we connect it to the framework? Okay. If you remember, we said there is 8 milestones. So the first is the intent. The second, you define the physical deliverables. The third, you define the digital deliverables. When you're defining the digital deliverables, this is where the model use template fits. Because how do you define digital deliverables? You have to define what models you want, what documents you want, what data sets you need. When you want things to be delivered to you in a 3D model, that's we call, and you want to use it as a model, that's called the model use. So the work done by the Gina, Fernanda, the team is to define a template for people to define a specific use. So how can you extend? You could work with the F2 team, with Regina, Fernanda, and the team, in order to develop new model use templates for cost estimation, for construction sequencing, for wind studies, solar studies, okay? So you could extend that part. You could also look at metrics, meaning how can we have all these reverse actions or going from one milestone to another. What are the metrics needed? You know, how can we apply some of these metrics? What are the things missing? And we're going to be publishing, we have lots of what's called micro projects related to Project F. So the framework is like the top micro project. Then we have the model use template is F2, which is the second micro project. Then we have now a project underway, which is called software classification project. So there's a classification of 500 software. That's like a separate project of what software can do for you with regards to model uses, document uses, data uses. The best thing you can do is read a lot about this. This is not gonna show itself directly, and it will need some effort. If you find that you would like to contribute on the specific thing in the framework you'd like to improve, like you want to test it in an agile way, test it against lean, test it against IPD, integrated project delivery. You want to test it on a small project within your, like within lab conditions at the moment. We're not recommending it to go live. There's a lot of things to make this improve, extend, validated, and hopefully over time becomes a platform. If you were in a company that happy to invest in this, that sees a potential for helping the industry move forward, and you want to help the not-for-profit community to develop these platforms, you are welcome. You know, you could be part of the discussion, you be part of the development. So there's so many things that can be done. Now I'm going to end with just one thing. I wanna show you just a quick slide that connects what Regina was presenting. I'm sorry, let me just show you directly this card. Let me see. Let's say look at this one. The framework itself. So connecting information milestones, that's level 1 flow. Okay. There's lots of flows. The flows that Regina showed, like these flows, and are here, level 4 and level 5. We have lots of these flows being developed. And we're now working with partners to connect these information flows to data flows. Because if you want to integrate information across the supply chain, you have to integrate the data of products, of physical products for construction. The framework allows discussing all these topics without losing the connection. That's what the framework does. So if you are involved in information management, if you are a lean expert, if you're an agile expert, if you are any expert within these 76 topics that Regina mentioned, okay, there's a list of them on the website. You can go and look for model users list. Please connect with us. Sorry for the long answer, but I thought it'd be useful.
I think that the template itself, the structure, is there. It may be stressed when we apply to other model uses, and then we can find that this structure maybe needs updating, changing, but the structure is there. Now it has to be applied to all model uses and be populated the way we did for the clash detection, right? Like now for CUST, for structural analysis, for solar analysis, all the model uses that there are. How do we go about doing this? Well, after we finished and we were in this, throughout this year, thinking about the strategy of how to develop new model uses, how to put new model uses in this template, we looked back and looked at our group. How did we come about developing the clash detection, drawing clash detection through this table, to this template? So nós desenhamos a forma com que nós desenvolvemos. We did the drawing of how we developed, and now we know this, and we will try to make the new groups go through the process like we did. Or maybe if our process is not applicable to other new templates, things will change. But we will go about managing these new teams, right? And it's a big effort, it's a long time effort. Savio also made another question. Savio asked, what Zucker would suggest to Brazilian researchers who are interested in testing and validating the conceptual foundation? I say you should do research in reverse action, because we only do research on forward action. We should do a lot of research in reverse. We should do research on automation, on robots, put robots to do things, little things, tiny things, big things, I think we should go there. We should understand more about this pool of information, how the information is, how the information goes about and is shared throughout the process. This is, I think we should go through automation. What do you think, Zucker?
Yes, I mean, every aspect, needs to be studied more, definitely, researched better than has been done. This is just the start of just, trying to organize knowledge in a certain way to make what we call at the initiative research at scale. you know, the idea of the framework is to enable research at scale. How can, it's not no longer enough, and this is just a different concept that we didn't discuss today. The light framework, okay, it's an approach of information management, integration, etc. It's intended to deliver a platform to be used, but also it's intended to encourage research at scale, like a large number of researchers to be working together to solve a problem. Like we see today, sadly, with the COVID-19, one of the good things happening is the openness of sharing data and information with different researchers trying to solve a problem. Of course, our supply chain integration issues is not as serious as COVID-19 or, you know, coronavirus, but we have to learn the lessons and we have to work together through open frameworks, open dictionaries, open interaction of sharing knowledge in order to solve this issue of digital transformation. So please join in finding the area that you are most passionate about, and we're looking for researchers. And researchers doesn't mean have to be academics. It's not what we do. We have 140 people in the initiative. Half of them only are academics. The rest are researchers, meaning they're searching for a solution. So if you're searching for a solution and the framework gives you a structure, please join us.
Ok? Temos aqui mais 3 more questions. I will try to mix the question because the same. It's a Freddy and Mariana. Existe alguma prioridade em relação aos MU? Porque o primeiro demorou 1 ano para ser desenvolvido. Né?
No, it lasted 4 months. The structure was 1 year, but to apply the structure to the model use was 4 months. It was hard work, 4 months.
Ok. And, existe alguma forma de otimizar o tempo para se chegar aos 76? Ok? Second. Na iniciativa pública, temos muitos desafios. A falta de informação é o principal motivo para a dificuldade de adoção do BIM. Será que existe um model use específico para determinado uso para um perfil de cliente? Seria possível essa tipificação? Né? E tem uma terceira questão. Poderia dizer que a evolução do BIM conduz a ter um novo produto na indústria da construção, né? O prédio digital em si, ou mais see more. Could you say that BIM evolution led us to have a new product in building industry? The digital building itself seem more as an individual asset than as project state toward the physical building. You understand or not?
Half.
Can I answer the first question? That's an easy one.
The first question?
Yes.
Yes, it's about the priority of MU, okay? And se existe como otimizar esse tempo, né, para que você consiga fazer os 70.
Well, we ourselves, the 5 of us, Lorena, Paula, Bruno, and Fernanda, and me, we had this question. So we did a dynamic between us, and we put a form where we would grade the 76 model uses. We would give 4 grades of ourselves, which we thought was essential. We had knowledge about it, was essential knowledge. if it was an innovation, and there was a fourth criterion, I don't remember. And we would give grades from 1 to 5, and with pesos, with I don't know the word in English. And so we came with a classification of the 10 model uses which we thought we should go about first. But we don't think that we should enforce this prioritization that we came about, because it's a push and pull opportunity. If there comes a group that wants to work with us and has many skills and many competence in 4 or 5 model uses, so they say, oh, we don't know where to start, then it's okay, you give us the opportunity to tell you. So we look at our lists and say, oh, start with this one, right? Or maybe there comes a group that knows how to do structural calculation very well. It's not on the 10 most prioritized. So yes, yeah, let's go for this model use. So it's a push and pull thing about which model use to choose to put on the template. Well, 76, it's a high number, right? We are a group of 4. How are we going to go about this? Well, let's go first with baby steps. Let's do a first pilot managing of a new model use described through the template. See how this goes about, see how if our idea of how the process would be replicated works. And then we have an idea to go parallel more than one model use at a time. And every time a team finishes a model use, we may invite someone to come and join us and do the managing with us. So this group of 4 or 5 now that manages the future model uses may grow more and more. You learn when you do the template to a model use, so you can apply what you have learned to manage other groups to do other model uses. So this is how we think we should go about.
Can I explain why Regina says working with me is difficult? It's because we want to finish all remaining model use templates in 3 years, all of them. Okay, how are you gonna do this? It's because we're applying research at scale principles, meaning the first one will took whatever it took, doesn't matter. It's now tested, validated, published, reduced. The second one would be more than one, would be 2 or 3 together to test the mechanisms of delivery with different groups. Then it would be 10 together. Then it would be 20 together, okay? We need to finish this in 3 years. And this is where the mechanisms took time. So, you know, in the background, what you see is you're seeing now the product. There's a strategy, there's flows, there is a Gantt chart that developed beautifully by the team about how to recruit, who to recruit, when to recruit, what are the steps for validation. So there's a, you know, Regina, it's not telling you everything, Regina. Why aren't you telling them everything, Regina? You have such a beautiful mechanism to recruit lots of groups together.
Yes.
And we're also open to, you know, if a company says, I want you to focus on this, and I'm happy to help you, we could recruit student researchers, PhD researchers, dedicate certain hours from their time to make this happen quicker, okay? It's about, we want to deliver this openly to the community as soon as possible. Our role is to develop the mechanisms of delivery, okay? We have the structures for knowledge. Now we're working on mechanisms of delivery, not just for model use templates. We've done this in a dictionary. We've done the dictionary. It has 700 terms, now has 24 languages, more languages to be added because we're delivering mechanisms for delivery. I'm sorry, I missed the second and third question.
Yeah.
About owners. We don't deal with owners as such or with designers as such. We look at information. So this information could be used by owners, could be used by designers. So look, what is the information going to be used for? You're going to be using it for facility management or maintenance. That's what we focus on. So you're going to be focusing on information uses for operation, for maintenance, for management. Yes, an owner could say, these are good for me, and you can use them, but anybody else could use them. So we do not differentiate by role. We don't differentiate by phase, like design, construction, and operate. We don't use these differentiations because they're not real. Okay, there's just procurement, historical procurement ways. All types of information could be used across the whole life cycle. So we focus on delivering the mechanisms, the workflows, the terminology needed to improve these flows. And there was a third question. I'm sorry, I'm missing some of the questions in the chat, so my apologies. The third question was it?
So, it's about the use of the model, the framework in a public in a public service.
Yeah, it could be used by a public service. Some of the things being delivered as part of the framework, not just the model use template, are for coupling digital and physical, or what to call the digital twin. Some of the things, mechanisms being delivered for that. If you're in that space, there's something for you. If you're in the space of managing specifications for assets, yes, that will be part of milestone 2. So we work there. So across the whole life cycle of the asset, progressively over the next 2 to 3 years, you will find lists for you to use, decision support systems. You will find activity flows similar to what Regina showed, but this will happen progressively. We are working with multiple teams. Each team is focusing on a specific milestone or a specific connection between different milestones.
Okay, 3 last questions, okay, because the time. Yeah. Existe a professora Diana, da Federal da Bahia. Ela trabalha com drone, IoT, em inteligência artificial, né, para medições de monitorar progressos em obra, segurança, acompanhamento físico de recursos dentro da obra. E ela quer saber se pode haver alguma relação, né, de testar esses modelos nessas aplicações que ela faz. Ok? Uma segunda pergunta é qual é a importância desses frameworks para a questão do ensino nas universidades, tanto de engenharia como de arquitetura. Ok? E a última pergunta é quão importante... Não, desculpa. O modelo usa ranqueamento, rank, com simplicidade essencial, inovação e know-how e critérios de tomada de decisão?
Não, na verdade, isso foi a Lorena dizendo, como eu esqueci os 4 critérios, ela falou que era simplicidade, inovação, qual era o outro?
Essencial.
Know-how, o know-how que nós tínhamos, né? E o quão essencial ele era.
Bom, por favor, please.
Okay, so question first, I'm assuming for me, and the second I will share with Regina. Whether it's IoT, drones, laser scanning, 3D printing, all these things are, ways of importing and exporting data from digital to physical. So they are covered in the framework. And when it comes to IoT in particular, there is a model use called BIM IoT linking or integration. Okay, so that's a specific model use which will benefit from these types of experiences. Now, there's multiple entry points to bring in digital information into the asset life cycle. through drones. That's an excellent way of bringing that through laser scanning. That's another entry point into it. We do not focus on the specific methods in the framework or the work we do. We just accommodate them, meaning whatever method you use to bring in the data, you should be able to use the framework for it. Okay, but we don't have currently a specific project that covers the use of drones in construction. That's not something we're focused on. Our focus more is on knowledge management, information management and integration, and connecting these to data streams. That's where we focus our attention. We cannot, of course, cover all topics in the industry, but what you mentioned is very important method to bring in information into the life cycle, and then the life cycle will take care of managing it. The second question was about education. I just want to mention before, because Regina, this is Regina's specialty, everything we do at the BME initiative is about education. Yes. Education. It doesn't have to be formal education. We don't have to say we have courses, okay? We just, by providing our knowledge resources openly under Creative Commons, allowing people to use them also within their companies. We want to educate, we want to train, we want people to improve their performance. As we go, we have a project called Project C. If you come to the seminar, we discussed it briefly. We will make some of these educational approaches a little bit more formal, because what we do is informal education, structured education. We want to make it a little bit more formal.
Now, answering Diana, one good way to go would be to develop the model use template for integration of bin IoT, and then instantiate it in specific situations to test. If the general way that you describe this model use to integrate BIM and IoT would be valid when you instantiate, because BIM IoT is very, let's say, you can do a model use template in a very abstract way, and then when you instantiate, you have to define the type of sensors, and it's there may be two levels there. But in order education, I think that when I was preparing this presentation, Suker, I looked at the flow, and I saw here I see a training prepared, So you can see in education we talk about objetos educacionais, educational objects. Every of those tarefas, of those activities, would be an educational object, a little package, that you can put together to make a big course. So yes, also I have to tell you that I was recently doing a final review of a paper, and I called the author and I said, look, you have to read definition of federated model and integrated model in the BIN dictionary, because the way you are writing, there is an inconsistency. Please go to the BIN dictionary, understand what is an integrated model and a federated model, decide which one you saw in your case study, and then write about it. So it's already educating, it's already educating. It's educating the terms, to have all the terms in English, then have all the terms in Portuguese, in Turkish, and how many languages are we working on it right now?
We have 24, and the Danish should be on soon, so it becomes 25.
Yeah, so it's really, open knowledge structuring, open knowledge sharing. So it's all about education.
Okay, it's finished. It's interesting because the discussion, all this resuming information. Being it's a information. the project, the drawing is information. I think it's very interesting to think about and to worry about information, because it's management and project and drawings all work with information. In this this framework, the light, it's directly this. I think it's very, very interesting, and it's a very, very modern. It's a very, very actual. It's very, very interesting. And I challenge many people, many researchers, and for example, here in Fortaleza, there is a group, Inovacom. It's one of the supporters of the webinar. There is a group that study BIM. It's coordinated by Jefferson Boas, and I think it's a big problem for this group to discuss and to deep in this idea of light, because it's now it's a discussion about BEP. It's about for example, strategic vision about BIM, yes, and I think it's a good challenge for this group, and for in Brazil. Okay, and
perfect.
And I'd like to thanks to Suka, and it's a very, very interesting. And I'd like to thanks Regina for your presentation, for the complementary works in the presentation. It's a very, very interesting for us. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Basnetto, for the invitation. Really appreciate it, and thank you, Regina, for being our colleague in the initiative. You don't know how much value you add, and your group, to the sharing knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Regina.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's also so nice to be able to share such a open and open view and participate in an effort that is that wants so big things, So it's always challenging, and it's like I really learn. This process is of learning.
Okay, thank you. And Suka, I hope to see you again in Brazil as soon as possible. Okay.
Absolutely.
The
first chance.
Yes, yes. Okay, and I'd like
to
agradecer a Tatiana e André. André, por favor.
Obrigado pela presença de todos, né? E antes da gente encerrar, Barros Neto, eu vou só passar aqui um vídeo do estudo de maturidade que um dos parceiros do evento está desenvolvendo. O estudo de maturidade BIM a nível nacional, tá? Então, eles estão lançando esse estudo, estão fazendo uma campanha bem extensa sobre esse levantamento de como é que está a maturidade BIM nas empresas, nos escritórios de projetos. Então, vou fazer aqui vou abrir aqui o vídeo para quem estiver participando do evento e quiser apoiar, participar, para que vocês conheçam esse evento.
Agora você também faz parte dessa história. O Ciente, com o apoio de grandes especialistas em BIM, traz ao mercado um estudo inédito que traçará um mapa da maturidade de construtoras e incorporadoras para a adoção da metodologia BIM. Meu nome é Gisele Anversa e eu irei te explicar como você construirá essa história conosco. Queremos conversar com construtoras e incorporadoras interessadas na implantação da metodologia BIM. Você pode estar se perguntando: minha empresa ainda não implantou o BIM, então eu não posso participar desse mapeamento? Não se preocupe, você pode e deve participar. Esta pesquisa é para empresas de construção interessadas na metodologia BIM. O projeto é dividido em duas partes. A parte 1 se trata da identificação de empresas interessadas na adoção e implantação da metodologia BIM. A parte 2 é a resposta a um formulário específico. Nós estamos na primeira fase dessa pesquisa. Nessa página, você encontrará o link para realizar a inscrição da sua empresa para a primeira fase. Pedimos que você preencha todos os dados solicitados com muita atenção. Essas informações são fundamentais para termos um mapeamento correto de acordo com as características regionais e de cada empresa. Depois disso, você responderá uma pergunta muito importante. Sua empresa utiliza a metodologia BIM? Caso sua empresa trabalhe com a metodologia BIM, você deverá indicar 5 perfis fundamentais para mapearmos a maturidade BIM. Um membro da alta direção, um gerente de engenharia ligado à área de projetos, um analista de engenharia também ligado à área de projetos, um membro da área de tecnologia da informação e um ponto focal da metodologia BIM em sua empresa, um BIM Manager, gerente de projetos ou similar. E não se preocupe se o mesmo profissional em sua empresa desempenhar mais de uma função. Você deve repetir os dados, sem problema. Caso a sua empresa não trabalhe com a metodologia BIM, queremos saber as principais causas que dificultaram ou impediram a adoção da metodologia. Também queremos saber se, no curto prazo, sua empresa considera adotar a metodologia BIM. Lembre-se, estas perguntas encerram a primeira fase, a fase de inscrição das empresas interessadas no mapeamento BIM Brasil. Caso você tenha ficado com alguma dúvida, nós estamos à disposição para te ajudar. E se você gostou desse estudo, nos ajude a impactar o maior número de empresas interessadas. Compartilhe o nosso material e nos ajude a transformar a indústria da construção.
Ok, eu vou estar encaminhando para os inscritos o link da pesquisa. Quem tiver interesse em participar, né, é só preencher como a Gisele orientou aí no vídeo. Ok? Então, mais uma vez, eu agradeço. Foi um prazer conhecer a professora Regina, né, o Suca, né, Tatiana e Barros Neto, pela parceria que a gente já vem desenvolvendo nesses webinars. Então, foi um prazer. Espero que todos tenham gostado. E, mais uma vez, agradecer às pessoas que apoiaram a gente, né, as empresas, o Inova Sinduscom Bahia, a Cone, o Cienge, né, a Universidade de Goiás, a UFC, o GERCOM. Né. Obrigado, pessoal, e até o nosso próximo webinar. Né, e conto com a participação de todos. Mais uma vez, boa noite e muito obrigado.
Bye bye.
Tchau, tchau. Até mais.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.